welcome back to another Outdoor Philosophy. So we're going to continue on with the Lucifer Principle. We have just a few sections left here, which is good because I am about sick of reading this book, to be honest. There's some interesting things in here. Of course, this entire section is called Ideology is Theft, and the overarching principle is kind of about lonely at the bottom, friends at the top, which in reality, successful people generally report more lonely at the top than at the bottom, which is certainly a point of discussion and debate. But once again, what they're talking about here is utilizing ideologies as means of controlling societies. And there's some interesting things in here. Of course, I had done some very specific discussions from the Christian perspective because there are some things that were just literally flat out wrong that I wanted to address there. But the primary thing we're going to focus on here is probably how that this chapter section is sort of like how business kind of takes over our modern societies. There's discussions in here on some of the older Roman wars, some discussions on some of the religious wars, Islamic versus Christianity. There is the Roman versus Chaldeans. There's even the battles within the Roman or within the Islamic faith, the Shiites and my apologies, I forget the other group name off the top. But also some discussion about medicine again, which is kind of a fascinating part. So this was a little bit longer section. I think the next section's even longer, so hopefully I can do it in one part. It might end up being two-parter. But we start in with the world as an invisible weapon, basically utilizing our trends. I didn't really want to talk much about that or the true route to utopia here because I covered a lot more of that in the section I talked about on the Christian view. I think actually why men embrace ideas and why ideas embrace men also. But really where we get the most fascinating part I wanted to talk about actually had more to do with the kind of the middle part. Before that, it was very much more on the spiritual end, so I didn't want to get to here. But the section on the Shiites struck something interesting. And of course, this isn't going to specifically be about the Islamic part, but just the overarching principle of this book. They start out by saying battles don't take place between societies, they take place between groups within a social unit. And that's so important to recognize that we are in this two political party system and we are about as far at ends with each other politically as we can, so much so that, I mean, it's very possible we could see civil war because literally 50% of the population, and it's been getting this way progressively more and more so, but we're to this point right now in our country where as much as people complain about Trump, remember that 50% of this country voted for him and his approval ratings are actually very good, considering, how other modern presidents' approval ratings have been. And that's one thing we need to realize is we hear a whole lot more of the negative end because it's the views that are against Trump are those that tend to control more of the media. Of course, the only one that's closer to Trump's side would be Fox, but pretty much everybody else is against the president right now. And those are the people that have the radio stations. Those are the people that have the television stations. Those are the people that produce the movies. They're the people that produce the music as an overarching generality. There's obviously some exceptions in there as well. But we are in a nation right now where pretty much we are exactly on a 50-50 divide. And if we need to maintain this nation, we need to abolish the political parties. Neither one of them. Get rid of them both, and anybody running under a political party, just exclude from office for a while. Let's run on complete independence for a little bit and see what happens. Because sadly, I fear that, and I know people that voted for Trump just because of, the Republican side. That's the wrong reason to vote for a president. But what was fascinating here is that going back to that comment, battles don't take place between societies, they take place between groups in that society. And that's kind of one of the biggest dangers I see with social media these days, where everything is algorithm driven. See, and YouTube's been destroying that now as well. Every time a social media introduces an algorithm to display news, it marks the collapse of that. Facebook is becoming completely irrelevant because they have done that. Instagram just put that into place, so I'll give it about 2 years before that's irrelevant. And basically, when you deploy an algorithm, what ends up happening is it narrows your view of mind. And what we need to do is we need to expand our view of mind. You need to watch things from opposing viewpoints. But if all of these algorithm-based things are all feeding back into you based on things that you've already looked at in the past, it narrows your scope of mind rather than broadens it. And then in that narrowing the scope of mind, we tend to look at the other group as the enemy. And that's not what the purpose is. Not what the purpose is at all. But of course, they talk about how these two, the Sunnis were the other one. They talk about the two groups, the Shiites and the Sunnis, vied for power in in the early Islamic. But then we actually get into something fascinating where they're talking a little bit about medicine. And this is another important thing to bring up, because there's this giant battle about medicine, and some of the places I generally pull articles from, they're very, very liberal, and of course, pure science, and everybody thinking about anything homeopathic is, you're just stupid and primitive, and that's not the case. If you look at how the history of medicine moved, and I came from a medical background, if you look at the way the medical moved throughout the world, what we see is that there was at a point in time a competition. See, what we have in modern medicine is called allopathic medicine. And prior to that, we had homeopathic medicine. Well, I got a fun news flash for you. The way the body works is homeopathic. The immune system we have is homeopathic. So we can't just throw it all out. But at the same token, we can't just throw out all of the allopathic as well. But what happened is early on, there were some struggles between the two different groups of medicines, and the allopathic group ended up founding the American Medical Association and utilizing drugs, utilizing opioids, utilizing a lot of things that today would be barbaric. That is what they use to crowd homeopathic medicine out. And the reality is both aspects are part of our nature. I mean, within this park where I'm at, I think I walked by some willow trees today. Willow trees contain in their inner bark salicylic acid, which is aspirin. So if you make a decoction of willow bark and drink that, you are effectively taking aspirin. And that is an allopathic medicine that has been known by societies for years and years and years. But the original homeopathic medicine was to give small doses of things that might otherwise be poison in order to bring it up. But guess what? That's how the immune system works. That's exactly how our immune system works. Both of them are important aspects. Now, we shouldn't shun one over the other, and we shouldn't put too much faith in one over the other, because oftentimes what we see is we're getting to the point right now where the pharmaceutical companies are the gods even over the doctors right now, and it's causing rampant problems. As I've discussed, we've looked at the AIDS drugs, we've looked at the EpiPens, just this recent cancer drug where the doctors said, well, we don't need to take the full dose, we can cut that down to 1/3, and so the drug companies raised the price 3 times. I mean, that's the type of problem. We are in a world where the pharmaceutical companies are ruling things based upon the money that they're going to get, not based upon the actual treatment of the human being. And that in and of itself is what this chapter is talking about. The people at the top vying for the power to keep the people at the top. And that's where the direction tended to go. And then they dove into when these guys at the top are feuding and fighting with one another. And so if you look at how, right now, I would say Facebook is in a sheer decline. Now, they did report higher earnings this quarter, but a lot of people are leaving Facebook. There are a great number of them. A lot of people that are still on and staying on Facebook are simply staying because there's some little portion of it they need, but they're really not on there doing much. I'm in the middle of my Facebook experiment right now, and it's just like it boggles my mind why people spend so much time on it. And what we end up seeing in the light of all of this is that there are certainly there's always battles for the top position. You know, Microsoft, Apple, you know, Google, and maybe Google and Microsoft in those areas, Google and Facebook in areas of data collection. You have all of these different things vying for the top position of power, and that's kind of is a situation where I teach a lot on this channel here about moving out of the grip of the big corporate walled gardens and all of the different things that they want us to be tied into. You know, Apple wants us to use their services, so we get tied to their services, so we end up having to pay whatever they say to pay. That's exactly what the ISPs have already done. We as Americans, it is scary that in this country that is supposed to be a big and wealthy and free nation, we have zero freedom of choice of internet, which is the core of our entire society. That's a problem. And so this book talks about the vying for power, being political power, economic power. So there's pretty much, it was very monotonous by the end of this section because it was essentially the exact same message over and over. These guys fought these guys won, it's these guys won, more, they would gather more influence, and the people on the bottom lost influence, and that literally that's how this whole section went. So I was really bored of reading this section by the end of it, and it was long. So that's kind of what I want to talk about. The key take home here is think about the things you're doing and do not get yourself and let yourself be tied into these big companies. Don't allow yourself to tie into Google just for the convenience. Don't allow yourself to get locked into Microsoft or locked into Apple just for the convenience, because they are trying to lock you in. They're trying to vie and gain that ultimate control. You may have seen by now, I think I'll be covering it on the news yesterday. I'm recording this before the news. But anyway, you know, Amazon's got all these people addicted to Prime. So what are they doing? Jacking it up. Jacking up that price. It's like 20 or 30% or something. I forget. I'll have the details. But that's what happens. They get us stuck on a platform. They get us maybe addicted to the platform or thinking we can't live without the platform, and then they have us. They have us tied in. That is the thing where if we can maintain control of our lives, we don't have to put ourselves there. Maybe you can deal without some of those things. Maybe you find your own systems. I mean, I find that everything that Google services could do for me, as far as we're talking like business stuff, documents, calendars, syncing things, stuff like that, I can do on my own Nextcloud build, which is not hard to do. And it's like, oh, I don't know how to do that. Well, learn. Learn how to take control of your own life. Learn how to take control of your food. Learn how to take control of your computer. Learn how to take control of your life. Don't tie yourself in to the big companies that are vying for you as a customer and as a number. That's my final take-home message today. So thanks for watching this outdoor philosophy. You can help support the channel. Check out switchtolinux.com/support. Contains all of the ways you can help support the channel. You can check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/TomM, and I do have some t-shirts and other things available at shop.switchtolinux.com. So thanks for watching, and hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.